episode of Embracing Yahuah's Love with Five or More Children. As you know, each week we talk to a different mom um, about raising five or more children in Yahuah. This week we have with us Crystal. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Crystal?
Shalom. So I am a mother of 4 and 1 on the way. I am 36 years old. I've been married for 15. My husband brought me into the truth about 2016. And so I like to explain to people, like, for myself, because even though we were Christians before, we led a set apart life to the best of our knowledge and ability. And so it's just kind of like how the word says, going from glory to glory, in my experience. We just moved into our first home last year, and we are thriving. We homeschool. We've homeschooled since our eldest was in 3rd grade, and he's now going to be a junior in high school. So that's kind of the summary of me and what goes on in my life each day.
Wow, that's I never thought of it like that. Going from glory to glory. Cause that's interesting. Like I've never thought of it that way because before we came into the truth, we were also living basically a set apart life. We were already like growing our own food. We had basically started keeping the Sabbath. We weren't celebrating Christmas or any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We were a lot of the stuff that they were doing in a Christian church, we weren't doing because it wasn't biblical. But going from
Right.
glory to glory, I never thought of it like that. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, exactly. Because, like you were saying, we had cut out a lot of pork, for example, and we stopped celebrating birthdays and holidays. And that was before, we actually understood through scripture that, that it's unlawful. So we had a relationship. We each had our own relationship with the Father. And we were just, I guess you would say, like, led by the Spirit to let some of these things go before we even became aware. So yeah, it's a beautiful journey. For me personally, I didn't feel like I switched religions or anything like that. I just felt like Yah was just leading me to, taking me by the hand, giving me new understanding as he always has. And so yeah, that's the way I like to look at it.
That's cool. See, y'all, you're so faithful. You're so faithful because we had asked, and this I know this is not what, but whatever. Holy Spirit lead us. We had asked for the Father to take the taste out of our mouths for anything that was not like Him. And
Mm.
the first thing we used to buy this big pork butt because our family was growing and we would go to the store and we would have them chop it up into pork chops for us every month.
Mm-hmm.
This, which is crazy because I grew up Muslim. But when you get grown, you do whatever you want to do. That's our mindset in society. So
Yeah.
we would buy this pork roast and we have them chop it up. And the last time we bought it, we took it home, and before we could break it down, we just set it in the refrigerator. When we pulled it back out the refrigerator to break it up and put it into Ziploc bags to put in the freezer, it had turned into something very disgusting. It was pussing.
Mm.
It was like pus was coming out of it. It looked really gross. And we were just like, Father, what is that? Not and we started reading. We had started reading the Old Testament, going through the Old Testament. We would go on it before we knew we had to keep the Sabbath. We would go on Saturdays and we would sit on our back porch and we would light a fire and we would read through the Old Testament. And we
Wow.
came upon the dietary laws and we was like, that's why Paige started doing that because we had started asking the Father to take the taste out of our mouth for anything that is not like Him. So when we got
Mhm.
that pork roast that last time, it was like, all right, you asked me to take the taste out your mouth, so here it goes. And when we saw that, we were
Yeah.
like, never again. I don't know what this nasty little beast is, but we're not eating pork no more.
And see, that is so funny because we had kind of a similar experience where, we used to buy shrimp and we'd buy the ones that are clean and deveined and everything, but we started to notice that they weren't deveined properly, and we're like, what is this black stuff? Like I never had looked into what they do to the shrimp before it comes to our home or anything like that. So I'm like, why is there this black line on it? Like I've never seen that before. And then like we just were like, we're just not gonna eat this anymore.
Yeah. Okay, so going into a series, okay, into the show. How do you define parenting on purpose? Um, and what does it mean to guide your children on the path of righteousness in Yahuah, knowing, um, no, that's all of that. Sorry, that's the
Yeah.
question.
Um, I would say to me, parenting on purpose is, is me first and foremost having my own relationship with Yahuwah. And, I've, I started the journey, of a praying mother before any of my children were even born, and I was pregnant with my oldest, praying for his well-being, that shift into motherhood. So always praying for them and asking the Father to show me for each one, because each one is individual. They have different needs, different personalities. Um, so praying purposefully, first and foremost, Father, what is it that each one of them needs? Keep me mindful, keep me aware, just being attentive to each one of them, paying attention to them as they go about their day, as they play, the different conversations that I have with each one of them. Um, so that being, very key. And then in doing that, passing that relationship with Yahuwah onto them and, teaching them to pray, reading the word with them, and then just in everyday life, having the conversations with them and always tying that back to the word. Um, if they ask me a question on why we don't do something, or, why are you telling me to do this, or, whatever questions they have, explaining to them, from a scriptural standpoint, even reading the scripture to them, this is what Yahuwah says, this is how he looks at it. So yeah, just, I guess that key word of being purposeful, being mindful, and not just like kind of like floating through the day, but just being very mindful and focused on what the Father has for us, according to his word, how we're supposed to live, because he does call us to be set apart. So I do a lot of explaining of those things to them.
Okay, thank you. Um, okay, so in today's fast-paced and ever-changing world, how do you balance modern influences with your desire to raise your children with a strong spiritual foundation?
Oh, well, the first, I think, biggest decision that we made as a couple and as a family was to homeschool so that we could have more control over what they're exposed to, limit some of that outside influence. And then also, I like to utilize some of that stuff like media, whatever they're watching in cartoons and things like that. And, as I was saying a little bit ago, being mindful and being purposeful. So, sometimes if I see something, we're watching a cartoon or something, obviously this is not these things are not created by us for us. So there's gonna be some stuff you know, as thorough as we are as parents, there's gonna be some stuff in there that does not line up with Yahuwah's word. And so, you know, I will point those things out. You know, if it's a program that's, you know, generally appropriate for them, but I see something that's, you know, a little off, I'll just explain that to them. Like, we don't do that, and this is why. Or, you know, sometimes the older ones will even be like, oh yeah, you know, we don't do that. Or, you know, for example, they might have a like a Christmas episode, and they'll be like, oh, we're going to turn from this one. You know, we don't celebrate that. But yeah, sometimes I also like for example with my oldest, he's gonna be turning 16 soon. When he was a little younger, like 12, 13, I would watch some different TV shows with him, like Family Matters, for example. And I would use that show and sit with him and use it as an example. Like, they'd have different family conflicts, or the children would have, you know, influences to do something they shouldn't. And I would utilize that to help illustrate to him, like, this is what happens when you don't do what your parents say, or when you know, you do this or you do that. So sometimes, you know, because of, like you said, we live in a society that doesn't line up with the way that we believe, you know, we still try to utilize what we can as teaching tools.
That's awesome. We do that as well when it comes to TV shows and stuff, like watching Family Matters or Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, because we like to watch all the older shows with them, because I don't think there's anything out that's good right now in this day and age. I can't tell you one
Yeah.
show from today that I'm interested in allowing them to watch. But even when they are watching their little shows or whatever, they do the same thing with like the Christmas shows or the Halloween shows or something. They'll go, we're gonna turn this off without me even having to prompt them to do it. They know, like,
Hmm.
do this, or we don't. Like, there's a show, what is that show, Loud House. We used to watching Loud House because well, for the obvious reason, there's like 10 children, and so, you know, it's a relatable show, but it becomes
Hmm.
unrelatable when they put, you know, a same sex couple in the show. Like, why is that necessary for our kids to see? So
Yeah.
I didn't know for a while. I didn't know that they had put that in there. The kids didn't either. But recently they came and they turned on Loud House, and they were like, by the time I came around, the show was off. They had turned it off, and I was like, "What happened?" And they were like, "Did you know that they put two dads in the show?" I was like, "Yeah, I forgot about that." But they caught it and they turned it off. They just changed it. So praise y'all.
Yeah.
So it kind of,
Yeah.
this question kind of goes into that as well. Um, can you share a memorable moment or experience where you witnessed the positive impact of your intentional parenting on your child's spiritual growth?
Yes. The very first thing that pops into my mind is my 8-year-old. I noticed that because we had taught them about wearing tassels, fringes, and what it means. You know, read different stories in the Torah to them to demonstrate those, you know, the reasons why we wear them. And my 8-year-old, I noticed that he started to take it upon himself to wear them every day. And I was like, huh, that's really interesting.
Wow. Okay. So as parents, we often learn valuable lessons from our children as well. What have your children taught you about faith and righteousness?
Ooh, there's so much. um, no, that is a very, very good question because growing up, you know, I was under the impression that, you learn from your parents, not the other way around. But now being a mother myself, there are so many invaluable lessons that my children teach me. Um, even having the example of if they, well, I would say recently, there's been a couple situations where my oldest child has chosen to do some things that he shouldn't have done. And that like quickened me. I was like, oh, that's what that looks like. And that's what that feels like to the father when I do that. So it's like it made it more real, more tangible, and a lot more serious for me to be like, no, I have to be even more tightened up. I have to be on straight and narrow, that kind of thing. And also, in being a parent that there's nothing wrong with apologizing to your child when you're wrong, because that also gives them the example of how to do that, how to repent, how to apologize when you've offended somebody.
Um, yeah, they watch and they learn, and they are. So I like to look at it like our relationship with our children is a direct like example of our relationship with the Father, right? So
Yeah.
everything that we and that our children do is like, oh, is that how I treat y'all? Like, oh my gosh, that's so offensive. Like our kids, we like to take it personal sometimes. Like you're being so disrespectful and dishonorable, or you're doing this and you're doing that, and it's like, but look at them, look at it, look at their behavior. It is directly connected to how you treat Yahuah. Even the marriage relationship is a direct like it's an example of the marriage relationship between us and Yah. Right?
Yeah.
My husband always says
Yeah.
that I teach him how to be a bride to the Most High. And I when he first started saying, I'd be like, "What? That doesn't even make sense." But it makes perfect sense because we're all the bride of Yahusha, right? So
Yeah.
everything we do, everything our children do, everything everybody does is directly connected to the relationship between.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say that, you know, over the past several months, I've been able to see and really understand even more. Um, as wives, we have a very specially unique position in the household because we're neither at the head nor at the tail, or so to speak. Like the children, they're at the bottom. They have to listen to both parents. They don't, dictate any rules. They don't make any decisions. The husband is the head. He's the one who makes the final decisions on everything. As wives and the children, we all have to listen to him and follow his lead. But we're right in the middle, so we get to experience both ends of it, on a daily basis. So, like you were saying, that relationship between me and my children, that gives me experience and insight as to what my husband may be feeling if I treat him a certain way. And a lot of times that'll stop me and make me reflect and be like, I didn't like that, my child disrespected my husband. Well, I don't like it if I disrespect him either.
Right. That right there. Right there. And I remember one time, and I get really scared in cars. Like, I have really bad anxiety when it comes to driving. I don't know where it comes from. Well, I do know where it comes from, but I just don't know why it happens, like when it happens.
Mhm.
Um, but Yahuwah gave me insight into that. So one day my husband was driving, and it only happens when my husband's driving. Never, I can drive in a car with anybody, anywhere I can drive. But when my husband's driving, and he's a really good driver, he's never been in I've been in more accidents than he has. But he's a really good driver. Like he really be whipping that thing. We got this big old giant van, and he drives this thing like nobody's business. Okay. So, but when he's driving, I get really bad anxiety, and I throw my feet up on the dashboard as if that's gonna stop something. All right. Like I throw my feet up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Regardless, please stop! Oh my gosh! And one day Yahuah was like, do you trust me? And I was like, yes, I trust you. I just don't trust him. He's like, exactly. You not trusting him is you not trusting me because I gave him authority over you. I gave him the ability to protect you and to love you and to take care of you. Do you think if anything happens to you that I'm not going to deal with him? Do you think that I'm going to allow anything to befall you in the hands of him? And I was like, ooh, that makes so much sense.
Hmm.
So me not trusting him is me not trusting you. That makes so much sense. And then, so every
Yeah.
time I have that anxiety, I realize that it's me not trusting Yahuah. Like so I
Mhm.
take my foot down and I breathe and I'm like, I trust you, y'all. I trust him. So yeah, it's all intertwined. It's all connected.
Yes. No, that was a really beautiful example, and that kind of reminded me of something that Yahuwah had told me once. I was going through a situation where my husband had made a decision that I didn't particularly like because of how it affected me. Um, and in the midst of that situation, I was like, kind of like, well, I'm supposed to help him and, this, that, and the other. And, Yahuwah spoke to me and he was like, you make mistakes, don't you? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, when you make mistakes, you expect him to be patient and to forgive you and to support you. I was like, yeah. It's like, well, he deserves the same thing. He deserves to be able to make mistakes too without you telling him like you're wrong or you need to do this, you need to do that. And he's like, he deserves your full support just like you would expect it. And I was like, wow. And that same concept of it's like Yahuwah being like, don't you trust me? Because I'm not going to let anything happen to you or to your family. You have a righteous husband. You know that he makes the best decisions that he can for the family. Like, let him make his decision and support him. Never having that attitude of like I told you so kind of thing, but always being like, no, I got you. Doesn't matter what I think, how I feel, whether or not I agree. As soon as he makes the decision, I'm in agreement. And just completely supporting that and being like, okay, Father, like, what is it that you want me to learn from this if you are allowing this to happen or, if something's uncomfortable or whatever have you. Um, so, yeah, like you said, it's a very beautiful thing and it helps with that mindset because, if you have a mindset where, something is wrong here and you're the one trying to fix it rather than, being that help and being like, going in prayer and fighting for him and fighting with him through different things rather than like, oh, I got to get myself out of this. Like he did something wrong or, any of that. Like that's not how it is. And that, creates division within the marriage, which is not good. You're not going to get anything anywhere or anything solved that way. So I really, thank the Father for lessons like that.
Awesome, awesome. My phone rung, and I'm trying to make sure that I have the rest of the recording because it did something really weird, and I'm gonna cry if it didn't.
It
So,
looks like it's recording on my end.
okay, what does it say on your end? How long have we been recording?
24 minutes, 32 seconds.
Okay, so we got it. Um, because on my end it started back over at zero because the phone rung. Okay, We'll fix that. Okay, my next question for you would be, and I know you said you homeschool, so your kids don't really have that much outside influence as same as mine, but sometimes it still creeps in somehow with different family members or just going out into public. How do you handle
Mhm.
challenges or conflicts when your children encounter opposing beliefs or values from outside sources?
Hmm. Well, again, it goes back to, with the younger ones, it's just really, explaining certain things to them. I'll give an example. So recently, there's these couple of boys that live nearby that will come and ask for my two middle sons. And they'll play, like, we have a fenced in yard, so they'll play. I tell them, you need to stay in the yard, don't go anywhere. But then they see that these boys and other neighborhood children just running all over the neighborhood. And a couple of times I've caught them outside of our yard. Like, I have to go out and yell for them, not knowing where they are. And I'm like, okay, like, you have to sit down and listen. You can't do what you see these other people doing. And the reason is because we're trying to keep you safe. We've like I said, we've utilized different videos and things on what happens to children who are just wandering around, and different things like that. And we're like, continuing to teach them, but in a way that, because I'm sure in their little minds, they're like, well, everyone else is doing it. Why can't we do it? Everyone else is having fun. Why are you trying to stop us? And we're trying to show them that, this is a good thing. It's a positive thing. It's something that should bring you joy, that you have parents that want to protect you in every way possible. Um, and that doesn't mean like we just keep them locked up or anything. Like, no, we take them different places and, things like that. But yeah, you have different parameters because you're set apart from these people. So that's kind of how we handle things like that when they come across, it's something that we haven't necessarily explained to them already, things like that.
Hallelujah. See, I haven't had to deal with that yet. Cause I'm, I'm so, I wouldn't say scared, but I guess I'm so like, cautious when it comes to like my kids playing with other kids or going out and being like, I let them know like you can't do the things that other kids do. So what's the point of you going and hanging out with these other kids? What's the point?
Yeah.
You can't do what they're doing, so there's really literally no point. And other people would say, well, how
Yeah.
are they going to be? How they going to minister to people, or how they going to witness to people? How they going to be a light? Blah blah blah. You have to. You can be a light by being. We're a city on top of the hill. Your light is going to shine regardless. Like you don't have to go
Hmm.
for the darkness in order for your light to shine. Your light's going to shine wherever you are, wherever you go. You're going to stick out because it's a light. The darkness doesn't cast out the light. The light casts out the darkness. But that doesn't mean you have to go and be in. Go and seek out the darkness just to have somewhere to hang out at, or to feel like you have friends or something. Does that make sense?
No, you're absolutely spot on because we've explained to all of them, like, you're not gonna have no bunch of friends. You're not gonna be, the center of attention or popular because that's what it looks like to be set apart. And we also use ourselves as examples. We're like, you don't see us around no bunch of people. You don't see us bringing a whole bunch of people over here, into our home and things like that. you know and it's just like, uh, another example we use too is like with Yahusha. Like, he was always leaving the crowds and going, like you were talking about, the city on a hill. He'd go, up on a hill or up in a mountain somewhere, get away from folks. So it's like, like you were saying, just we've always taught them. And I always refer to my oldest because there's 7 years in between my oldest and my second. So yeah, we have the one teenager now, and the rest are little ones. And we've always taught him, like, you can't go out and do what everybody else does because you're different than them, and you know better. You have been taught since you were little. You've been taught to where you've been taught what's right and what's wrong. So yeah, it's a challenge. Especially once they get up in age and they're able to go out and have more freedoms and make their own decisions. But you always have to go back to the word, and Yahuah promises us that as long as we train them up in the way they should go, when they're old, they won't depart. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be challenges or roadblocks or that they won't make wrong decisions sometimes. But, we continue to tell them, like, what if they're doing something that's sin, like, that is sin. That's very serious, and there are consequences. And again, always going back to scripture, like, this is what it says. You do this, this is what happens. And it's always so interesting with my husband. Like, he will talk to our oldest. He'll be like, if you go down this road, this is what happens. Or he'll see him doing something. He's like, if you continue going down that road, this is what it ends up becoming, and this is what happens. And it'll be like a week later, exactly what he says happens. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
talk to our 13-year-old the same way. And it's a okay, so going back to the letting them, training up a child in the way they should go so when they're old they won't depart from it. I struggle with that kind of letting go because he is getting older. I mean, he's 13 now, but he's gonna be getting older. Like, how do you
Mhm.
um let go of this is my baby? Like, I have to protect him. Like, he's growing into a man. He's bigger than me. So,
Mhm.
like, there was instance we were letting him go out and work. Like, he was doing yards and stuff when we were living off grid. He was
Mhm.
in the town and we were letting him go do yards. And we would let him walk up to the school, like, because when he'd be done, it'd be lunchtime for the kids in school. So we let him
Mhm.
walk over to the fence and talk to the kids until we got there to pick him up. And one day we were going to pick him up, and my baby was running down the street. He was running. This was last year. Yeah, last year. Yeah, last year, right before we left off the land. He was running down the street. I thought someone was chasing him. I was like, Bernardo, what's wrong with him? Somebody's chasing him. And he's running and looks like his face is like, somebody's coming. And I was like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? And he's like, oh, those kids tried to get me to do drugs. I was like, what? Oh, what? And he's like, the kids inside the school, one of the kids, and I knew his grandmother, she worked in a local store. He had threw he threw something outside of the fence, and it was basically one of those little margaritas, the salt you put on margaritas, they kind of sweet, and the lemon sauce you put on margarita drinks. He
Yeah.
had one of those little canisters, and he had dropped it out, and he asked my son to get him his drugs. And my son was like, no, you get it yourself. And then he took off running. So he wasn't scared or nothing. He was just like, these kids is crazy. I'm going to tell them. And he's like, that little boy tried to get me to pick up his drugs. And I was like, what little boy? And he told me what little boy, which is actually I guess he's supposed to be like the coolest little kid that went to that school because all the little girls liked him. Everybody liked him. My kids wanted to be friends with him. But after that, my son was like, hey, no. He was like, and it
Yeah.
wasn't really drugs, it was candy.
Yeah.
But I was so proud in that moment because he was like, I'm not even touching that. Like, I don't care what you say it is or what it really is. I don't got nothing to do with that. I'm out of here. So you do, and we do, like, real life instances of, like, examples of something that could happen, or scenarios basically. We've always done
Yeah.
scenarios and role plays and stuff like that of things that can and will happen, because I think what a lot of the times a lot of the topics people think are taboo and they don't want to
Yeah.
talk about it. They think that children won't be able to handle it. But if you start talking to your children at young ages and explaining things to them and letting them know what things are and how things really are, and keep it 100 with your children, then it helps them to avoid a lot of the pitfalls. Like, not saying that they
Right.
won't run into any situations, because they still have to know how to navigate through life, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it helps them by talking to them and sharing these moments with them. It helps them to know how to navigate when these situations do appear.
Right, right. And that's something like I was saying about like using TV shows or, YouTube videos and things like like you were saying, there are some topics that, are uncomfortable or you're not sure how to bring it up. So like, like I was saying, for example, more so with my oldest, we'd be watching some of these sitcoms together and there would be some really taboo subjects come up, and there would be times where I was like mortified, like, oh, I need to turn this off. And then I just would get this thought like, no, let it play. And then, or maybe I'd ask him a question about it, you know something like that, just to, even if the conversation didn't go very far, just to let him know like it's okay to talk to me about this, or there's no subjects that are off limits. I'd rather you come to me, I'd rather explain to you the truth about things than to have you learn it from some other kid, or from anywhere else. So yeah, it's definitely. And then always, I've always been mindful, like you said, when you start to talk to them from a young age, and you talk to them about these subjects at their age level. So, not saying like you just go into these conversations like full blown, like they're adults, but, you use language that they can understand, that's not, too much for them, or that's not inappropriate, things like that, so they can understand. Um, but back, then back to your other question of like, how do you handle like your children getting older? And I never really had that, like, oh, like I want to hold on to him, like, oh, that's my baby kind of thing. I've since my oldest was very young, I've always had these conversations with him, and I've always prepared myself like the whole point of all of this of parenting is to grow them so that they can be adults, so that they can handle life without you holding their hand. Um, so one of the lessons that I've had to learn recently, and it's a very hard lesson, is that just because you walk righteously, and you live Torah, you obey the Father, you have a relationship with the Father, does not mean that your child will always exemplify that.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
that's such a hard. Oh my gosh, that's
yeah.
such a hard hit. But you are absolutely right. Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
And even, Yahusha even says, I can't come not to bring peace, but a sword. I can't come to separate father from son, daughter from daughter-in-law from mother-in-law, like husband from wife. Like, nobody is exempt from the possibility of having to, give tough love or let's cut somebody off. Um, and I had to experience it as a child, cutting my parents off, my brother, different things like that, because they don't live righteous lives. But when it came to my child, I was like, well, why? Like, he knows better. We trained him up from the time he was a child. It wasn't like he was, you know, older, like 13, before we started teaching him right. Like, he grew up this way, so why is he making choices that are contrary to what we've taught him? And he knows the seriousness. Like, I'm going over all these things. And then, it was a couple months back. My husband and I, we do Bible studies and things like that. We were going over the story of Job, and it is said that Job was the most righteous man in the land at that time. And he would even do like sacrifices and things on his children's behalf. Like he was like, just in case they sinned, let me cover them. And his children were all taken out because of their own sin. So we have to, as believers, sometimes have to accept hard truths. Like not every one of our children may make it. And also, but still having faith, also knowing that just because it looks a certain way right now doesn't mean it'll always be that way either. But sometimes we have to let go, or sometimes we have to, as parents, do something that doesn't feel good, because that's what love truly is doing
Mhm.
what's best for the person that you care about, even if it doesn't feel good, even if they may not like you. I've had to make decisions, you know, over this last year, like with that fear in the back of my mind, like my son may hate me because of this, but I have to do it anyway because it's what's best for him.
Right.
So yeah, it's not all sunshine and roses all the time, even though we're doing the best we can, as mothers, and as wives. Things don't always go the way we want them to.
Right. And then I think that's what the example of Abraham was as well, when he had to sacrifice, when Yahuwah had him go to sacrifice his son. And
Mhm. Yep,
hear me?
I can now.
Okay. Yahuwah never intended for him to sacrifice his son. But imagine if he would have been like, oh no, that's my son. I can't let my son go. Oh no, I can't do it. Yahuwah probably would have took him. He probably would have
Yeah.
took him. Like if he'd have had that attitude, but the fact that his heart was so willing, like, I trust you, Father. This is your son. You gave him to me. I'm gonna give him back. Like no matter what, you tell me
Mm.
to do, I'm gonna do it. And we have to have that same mindset when it comes to our children. Like if Yahuwah asks for them back,
And
then here you go. Take them. Do as you please.
I'm glad you shared that example because that just really encouraged me. Because, like I was saying, like it's difficult to be like, oh well, this may push him away from me, but I have to do it because it's what's best, and I have to put Yahuwah before everyone else. And so in obeying Yahuwah and seeking him for direction, like, what should I do in this situation? Like by me standing my ground, and standing on Yahuwah's word, I'm showing my child that this is not acceptable. This is not okay. This isn't in line with what I've taught you. And like you were saying, if I had the mindset of, well, no, this is my son, I'm gonna keep him close to me, I'm gonna let him do whatever he wants to, so he'll want to be around me, that kind of mindset, that would lead him further down a road where, like you say, Yahuwah may take him because of that, or his decisions may take him out. So I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah, sometimes we just gotta let go and let Yah. Like, yeah, I trust you to do what you do. I know you can do
Right.
exceedingly abundantly above all that I can imagine, and I trust you. It's not just lip service. What kind of say it's not scripture, not lectures, it's scriptures.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Um,
and it's like, I wouldn't let anybody else treat me that way or bring that type of behavior or sin around me. So why would I let anybody, just because you're blood related to me, treat me a certain way, or, bring sinful things around me, knowing that I walk a certain way?
right. You just have to pray and let Yahuwah work it out, because at this point he's accountable for himself.
Yeah.
Right? Job was
And
making all those sacrifices for his children, but at the end of the day, they were at the age of accountability. They weren't
mhm.
making sacrifices for themselves. They were still, oh, my dad's going to make a sacrifice for us. We can do as we please, do as we want. Your parents salvation is not going to get you into the kingdom. That's a
Right.
personal relationship at this
And
point.
also when you are making those decisions, especially making those tough decisions, and you are parenting to the best of your ability and following the Father's lead, you have that confidence to trust in his word. You're like, okay, Father, I did my part. Now I'm
Mhm.
trusting you and what you said you would do if I did this. So back to the verse that says, if you train up a child in the way they should go when they're old, they won't depart. That's what gives me hope in that it may not look that way today, but I did what I was supposed to do. So he said when they're old, they won't depart. That may not mean right now today. It may not mean he won't make wrong decisions or have challenges, but when at the end of the day, he's going to make the right decision to serve the Father. I have to have that hope, and that gives me the confidence to go to the Father and to pray on his behalf. Because I know he's not going to be turning around looking at me like, well, you didn't do what I told you to do.
Right. Your blood is not on my hands, sir. I did everything you told me to do. Okay, so
Right.
this is my last question. As a joyful matriarch, what advice do you have for other parents seeking to raise their children with a focus on Yahuah and righteousness?
Um, hmm. I guess I would say, um, as I said earlier, the the biggest thing that is important is to have your own relationship with Yahuwah. Because when you have that connection with Him, it's going to manifest in your other relationships. Um, you have that. He says He's our rock. You have that stability to know no matter what's going on, I can go and pray. I can get an answer. you know you have help, you have encouragement and consolation when you need it. So that is the biggest thing, and then also being patient and being attentive to the people that the Father has given you care over, so that you learn them and you learn what it is they need and how to teach them.
Oh, well, okay. That was our final question. Thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone who has tuned in as we conclude this episode of Joyful Matriarchs on the topic of parenting on purpose, guiding our children on the path of righteousness in Yahuwah. I want to leave with you an encouraging word. Remember that parenting is a beautiful and challenging journey, and it's okay to embrace both the triumphs and the trials along the way. As you walk this path of intentional parenting, know that you are not alone. Seek strength in Yahuwah and his wisdom, and trust that he is guiding you and your children every step of the way. Take comfort in the knowledge that every effort you make to instill values of righteousness, love, and compassion in your children is making a lasting impact on their lives. Embrace the moments of joy and celebrate the milestones, no matter how small. Be patient with yourself and your children as you learn and grow together. Remember that it's through our intentional actions and steadfast faith that we create a nurturing environment for our children to thrive in righteousness. As you continue on this journey, may Yahuwah's grace and love be your constant companions, and may your family be filled with joy, peace, and abundant blessings. You're doing a remarkable job as a joyful matriarch, and your dedication to raising your children in Yahuwah's love is making a difference in their lives and in the world. Keep shining your light, and remember that you are an inspiration to us all. Until next time, be blessed and keep parenting on purpose with love and faith. Shalom.